On today's 2-month review, we're going to be talking to translator Becky Crook about her experience translating Kjersti Skomsvold's Monsterhuman. We're going to talk about how to correctly pronounce Kjersti's name. We'll talk about the trials and tribulations that went into translating such a book like this, both in terms of its length, in terms of the wordplay, in terms of everything else. We can go over ideas in which are moments in which Becky feels like she accomplished something great, or things that she might have wanted to change now in retrospect. That and a lot more will be coming up on today's 2-month review.
To sing with straight face, que sera, sera, and drag those perfumed queens back to our place in a velvet box, and then make you move since you went underground. I've wanted to track you down since you went underground. I've wanted to dig you out.
See, Brian, I'm doing it professional for you.
It's getting there. It's getting there. I like it. I like it.
Getting there closer. So welcome to the 2-month review, a weekly podcast from Open Letter and 3%, in which we take one giant book, break it down section by section, talk about it, discuss it, analyze it, have fun. I'm Chad Post from Open Letter Books, joined as always by Brian Wood, author of Joytime Killbox.
Hi, Chad. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be a guest on your show.
Brian Wood, soon to be Rochester's best local author and writer of the best local book, if all goes according to plan. And for this special edition, we are joined by Becky Crook live from Seattle.
Thanks for having me.
And we will be going.
Congratulations on your book, Brian. I've been learning about it as I've been listening to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Becky. I appreciate it.
So congratulations on your preemptive fame and inability to go outside without being recognized.
Oh, I know. The fame is going to be awful, but I'll figure out how to deal with it.
If we get into this, if you get into the finalists and we get invited to that special City Paper Best of Rochester party, we're going to get drunk. We're going to make a fool of ourselves there. Just like last time. So today we're going to go over pages 360 through 406, which is the last section of East of the River. But basically, we can talk about that. We can talk about how this part is about the consequences of after Kjersti's first book gets published, like how it's received and her going on to work on her second book. But since you're here, Becky, it seems better to just go over, at least initially, like the whole process and everything that went into translating this book, because there's a lot here. This is a giant book. So I guess how long, I'll start with the easy question. How long did it take you to work on this?
Okay, so I had to think about it because as I've been catching up listening on the podcasts, which I have not actually been able to do all of them.
Yeah.
Yet.
Neither have I.
I felt myself getting really nervous because you guys kept finding spots where you were like, is that one of these things that is supposed to be a mistake? And I'm like, oh no, is that a real mistake? Or is that one of those things that's supposed to be a mistake? Because, and then I was thinking about the process again. And I believe that initially I was only given maybe 3 or 4 months. They were offered me to translate this book. And I took it crazily because I was young and naive.
Oh my God.
And there were a lot of mistakes because I was just working so fast to try to get through it. I mean, really stupid mistakes. Like I was just reading back through the notes the other day, and there was one where she wrote Oppvaskmaskine, and I translated it. I looked at it and thought it was vaskmaskine, and the difference is between a dishwasher and a like a laundry machine.
Yeah.
Things like that are just sort of stupid mistakes. Or like kjøleskapet and skapet, which is the difference between a refrigerator and a cupboard.
Oh, yeah.
And things that, I mean, you just shouldn't be making those mistakes, but I was going so fast. So
I can imagine.
Yeah. And then, so we had to go through afterward and sort of go back through and get all those things. And then, as I think that you said at the very beginning, there was also a legal dispute somewhere in there with the English publisher. And so the whole process took about I want to say like 1 or 2 years before it actually came out. But I wasn't translating the whole time. Part of it was just sort of going back and forth with legal things that I'm not allowed to discuss.
Right. Yeah.
But it was a big process. And the actual, what I would do in the future with this book is I would definitely give myself probably a year actually to translate something like that. You know, in a pinch, maybe 6 months, but I think even that would make me feel uncomfortable now to do that.
It's a lot of words. I would assume it would be at least a year, because we usually try and give people 9 months to a year for books that are like, 300 pages. Anything that's like longer than that, we try and plan out way in advance because of the sheer amount of time that it takes. And then you want to go over it a couple times, I'm sure, and you can't do that if you're like just trying to crush through pages.
Right. Yeah.
What was your process like getting it done in that short amount of time?
It was kind of hellish.
I'm a really terrible worker. I just want to know how do you actually work, because I don't work very much. So
okay, well, so that's a problem for you.
Okay.
No, well, I'm actually a very concentrated person. I can be really focused, and but it was still really awful because I had a young child, and my husband was in the very last year of his PhD. And it was I just feel like I wasn't really present for my family. And we had just moved across the ocean to a different country. And my daughter we had moved from the Netherlands, and my husband is German, and my daughter didn't speak English. She only spoke Dutch, which neither of us speaks.
Oh my God.
So it was like a big transition. And then here I was like translating this book pretty much morning, noon, and night, and then all the weekends. And it was not very pleasant. Normally, what I do is I drop my daughter off at school, and then I sit down and I'm just able to work from home from my office for a stretch of maybe 4 or 5 hours, and then do some family things, and then work for another couple of hours every day. And so I'm able to do that from home. Yeah. But
that makes sense. So with this, you finished it really quickly, and then you had the time in between when it got published, in which you could revise or tweak or whatever. Did you work with her much on the translation at that point, or with anyone else?
Yeah, I did work with her. I mean, I worked with her all throughout the initial translation too, but she expressed to me that she wasn't that confident in her English enough. So then I worked with an editor through the Norwegian publisher, and then later on through a different editor, and with her, I worked with her pretty much the whole time throughout that.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. I have a gossip question for you. That's not a craft one. Is Hilda a real person? Is it? I don't know if you're saying if you're saying it right or wrong. If I'm saying it right or wrong.
Hilda is a real person, but it's not her name is not Hilda, and she might not be a she.
Interesting.
There is some debate on some internet forums, if you want to go the gossip route, that it was Stig Setterbakken.
Oh,
wow. But I haven't really tried to delve into that. I don't know.
I mean, Stig Setterbakken's referenced in here as a separate character with Hilda at the same meeting. Like they have that drink afterwards or whatever after one of the classes, and he teaches, and she's there. So that
introduces Hilda to Kjersti.
Yeah.
It's
curious.
Be a nice literary device, I think, if it is him.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering, so you'd be sort of paying attention to it, but knowing like it doesn't really matter. It's just interesting that it is the one character who doesn't have a last name that doesn't track easily. But then like the references that Hilda wrote about Kjersti in one of her books. So that's why I was like curious if there's some book that would map onto, but I haven't read all of the Setterbakken books either because there's so many of them.
I know. I was always a bit curious to find out. I mean, I suspected that it was a real person. Yeah. I even suspected that it might be a man, but I wasn't sure. And I didn't really delve into it. Didn't have much time, but you can see if you get more information on the internet. Vast place.
It's probably all in Norwegian. I'll just have to Google Translate. It's going to come out with like the most interesting gossip ever.
Yeah.
With the craft stuff too, you mentioned that there were these like the slippages, and we talked about one of them in early on when the crocodile hunter dies.
Right.
And like the wordplay of that was pretty fun. How, yeah.
Was that one with semen?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that one's not actually like a word slip. It's it's just that she was saying the word in English. She was watching on the news that the crocodile hunter died, and she says in English, sad, sad, sad to her friends, and sad in Norwegian means semen.
Right.
Or sperm. And they don't, and then she's like, and they were wondering why I was talking about sperm. And I kind of I ended up cutting that because it was just not really an easy way to get the humor across without a big explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The best way to kill a joke is to explain it, right?
I know.
Yeah. You should have footnoted it. Put a footnote. This is a joke.
Yeah, it's always a question. So yeah, exactly. This is laugh here.
Yeah. that goes over
You
really
see,
well.
this is funny because
This is funny, and Norwegians would be laughing now.
It's how most stand-up comedy works.
a quick sidebar about the crocodile hunter dying. It was probably this was like in the heyday of South Park. Or does that still run anymore? I haven't seen South Park in like
I think
probably
so.
5-6 years. But they had a joke.
But
Where
there's something
Satan was
really
doing
comforting to know that it's still running.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I'm sure.
This is one of my favorite jokes ever on a TV show. So just like a week before, the crocodile hunter died, and it shocked everybody, right? Oh, we kind of knew it was coming, but just like, oh, that guy's going to die at some point because he's always, holding his baby while feeding a crocodile chicken legs. That's not a good thing. So Satan is having this Super 16 birthday party where he's dressed up as Britney Spears, and it's a Halloween party. And then someone shows up dressed as the crocodile hunter, and then Satan goes, "Whoa, dude, that is way too soon. You got to get out of here." And then he goes, "No, mate, it's actually me, the crocodile hunter. I just died." And he's like, "Oh, well, shoot, this is a costume party, so since you're technically not in a costume, you're still gonna have to go." And they kick the crocodile hunter out of the costume party. He's got like the thing in his heart, and it was like the best joke ever with the crocodile hunter.
I don't really get it.
So yeah,
But
it
don't
was a
explain
costume
it
party.
because it will make it really worse.
No, it's a costume party in hell. So everybody's already dead.
So
right?
does he go to
Hitler's
heaven then?
there and no, like so their joke was that the crocodile hunter went to hell and he got kicked out of a party because he wasn't wearing a costume. He just shows up, "Hey guys, where am I? What's going on?" And they kick him out of the party because he's not wearing a costume.
And that is your funniest moment of TV history ever?
You have to see it. It's really there's like two
I'm gonna
layers
find
on
this.
it.
I'm gonna
I
find
like
this.
it.
The
I'm explaining it terribly, but I just remember like how dark it was that they would make fun of the crocodile hunter's death, but they make it in this earnest way of he's innocently showing up at a.
I think it's funny that the devil dresses for Britney Spears.
Yeah, there's that too.
That is pretty funny.
I'll send a link to the YouTube clip of it or something.
There are 22 seasons and 297 episodes of South Park.
Oh dear God! All right.
Yeah, that's a lot. The last one aired in December of last year, so it looks like the new season would start anytime now. So yeah, still on, still keep going. Okay, so aside from that one, which isn't really a slippage, there are the moments of the slippages though with the language, which I know you had mentioned before we started reading the book, so I've always been kind of on the lookout for, and there are a number of them. But do you want to? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I wanted you to talk about that because I always think it's kind of interesting how you are coming across things that appear to be errors,
or just her quirky way of saying things, or just her personality, which I think is quirky.
Yeah.
Obviously, but so I'm trying to think of some of them. I may have mentioned one where she said, "My tree hurts," and her roommates were like, "What is she talking about?" And she's actually her knee that hurts.
Yeah.
And I just think it's funny that she puts that in the book, like that she sort of puts these things that she says wrong in the book. And then another one is that I'm trying to think of one that was kind of a difficult thing to figure out was she's watching an advertisement for she's watching an advertisement for like furniture, and she says something about how she's rummaging through her drawers, but instead of the word drawers, in Norwegian, the word drawers is skuffer. She says, I'm rummaging through my disappointments, which is skuffelser. And so she kind of makes this, this like, I don't know, pun or
opening lyric to a national song.
Yeah. Does she do an opening lyric to the national song?
No, but that seems like it would be. Like, I'm rummaging through my disappointments.
To our new national
I
song.
I save them all in my drawers. I can hear Matt Berninger singing it. It seems very, very apropos.
Yeah. But so in that one, that was kind of difficult to translate, obviously, because the words skuffer and skuffelser, they sound so similar. And so I think we had a couple different solutions. I can't remember what the final one was, but one of them that I suggested to her was like making it an advertisement about luggage, and saying like she was rummaging through her baggage, but like baggage can have like this other connotation.
Yeah.
But these kinds of things are really hard to translate, and she spends a lot of time on words and wordplay and I don't know, just things like that.
I wonder if someone must have written like some sort of paper or done some sort of study on which languages are most lend themselves or don't lend themselves to being having the wordplay translated. Like we brought up the example in here before of Guillermo Cabrera Infante's Three Trapped Tigers that Suzanne Joe-Levine translated, and that's loaded with wordplay, but she like sort of, it does come through. There's a lot of it that she was able to translate. It's just coming up with like slightly different solutions, but that might be because Spanish and English have there's something more similar, it seems. Whereas Norwegian, it seems like those kind of word plays will be even harder because it's so far removed from our sounds.
From our sounds, maybe, but English is also a Germanic language.
Yeah, so it should be close.
We share a lot of things with the Scandinavian languages as well. And most of the things that we have from Spanish, we've just stolen from from the Latin. But yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I think probably for every language, there's just a different set of challenges. But the only other language that I translate from is German, so it's another Germanic language, so I can't really speak to that. But
do you translate poetry as well, or only?
I have translated poetry. In fact, just this week, a poetry collection that I just finished translating is coming out. It's called Little Parsley, if I may make a plug for it. It's like
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a children's poetry collection from 1961 by one of Norway's most beloved poets named Inger Hagerup, and the illustrations, which are also amazing, are by the Norwegian-French artist Paul René Gauguin, who's the grandson of the famous French impressionist Gauguin. I don't know if that's pronouncing his name correctly, but it's a really amazing collection.
We don't worry about pronunciations on
right,
obviously.
I noticed. It's a really wonderful poetry collection, really, really playful and rhyming. And so it was actually, even though up until the point before I translated that poetry collection, I thought that Monsterhuman was my most challenging project to date, but now my most challenging project was actually a collection of 20 children's poems where I'm like writing a rhyming poem about a pig, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's what I was trying to figure out, because I know with like homophones and trying to get the translation correct, it's the precision of diction has to be just spot on and amazing, and obviously think of each word has so much weight to it that I could see a lot of struggles with Monsterhuman. Try to get the humor and the wordplay out of it would be very similar maybe to a poem. Or
absolutely. And I think for me, and it might be different for different translators, but for me, I'm discovering more and more that the key is really to be able to sit with it for a while, which doesn't lend itself to a translation where you have to get it done in 4 months. With the poetry collection, it was really 20 poems, and I have been translating that for about 2 years.
Wow.
And I didn't think it would take me that long, but it's just a lot of sitting with what I wrote, and then coming back to it like 3 months later and seeing it with a fresh set of eyes and being like, oh, actually that doesn't work at all, and this works really well, and what about this, and constantly having new ideas. And I think the longer you can sit with a translation, the better it's going to be. It's kind of like pizza is good the day that you buy it, but after it sits in the fridge for a while, I think it's just like even better.
I'm not sure I'm on board with that, but okay.
Okay. What do you call it? Eggplant parmigiana. How about that?
Yeah, there you go.
Sure, yeah.
For the more culinary among us.
Yeah, fair. Is that the book that you
Sunday gravy tastes better on Tuesday?
It does. Well, there are some in that camp.
Was this the book that you were had on Facebook today? The poetry thing, or is that a different book that you mentioned?
On Facebook today.
It's been getting a lot of responses or a lot of comments.
Oh, that is a children's book. It's called Why Am I Here?
Oh, right. That's what it was. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. But I did post it on my Instagram, Little Parsley by Enchanted Lion Books, who's based in Brooklyn. I posted that on Instagram a few days or weeks ago. And it's going to be released at the Frankfurt Book Fair this year.
Oh, nice. Well, what about this other one that you did, the other children's book? You said that you've been getting a lot of comments about it?
Oh, yeah, it's like so I don't have it at my desk at the moment, but it's called Why Are We Here? And it's just a kind of philosophical illustrated children's book about
existential dread.
Sort of. Cool. It's by the publisher Magikon, publisher in Norway. They do a lot of really beautiful books, but it's sort of this child, and it's a Turkish Norwegian illustrator and a Norwegian writer. And it's sort of this child who's thinking, what if I lived in a different part of the world where there was war, or what if I had to pick up and move and only carry what I can bring with me? And, what if, I don't know. He sort of imagines all these different things. Some of them are dark, and other ones are sort of more like, what if this is how we had to go to school, or things like that. So. Okay. But interestingly, I haven't ever read too many comments, or I haven't had people talking to me about it, and I translated it in 2014. Right. And, but recently I've gotten a lot of comments about it, and I wonder if it's just because there's so much of these things happening that are being presented in the news more and more. Yeah.
Makes sense. That's timely again.
Yeah. But I was thinking recently, and this is pertaining back to the book, to Monsterhuman. I was thinking about how Norwegians, a lot of Norwegian literature, or this autofiction, is that what it's called, is quite dark and irreverent. And I really love Kjersti's irreverence. And I was just wondering if I have no idea because I'm not an anthropologist, but I was sort of wondering if maybe in cultures where you're sort of socially expected to be more subdued and not really express passionate or dark feelings, which is definitely, I think, part of Norwegian culture from what I can tell. I wonder if that comes out through the literature in various ways, and maybe that's why we get all these really dark crime fiction from Norway. And and then her, I think that her way of being in Norway is countercultural to the culture in Norway. I think maybe in America we laugh at it and we think it's funny and quirky, but I think it's, from what I know of Norway, I think it's quite unusual. Her snarky kind of lack of fitting in socially.
Yeah, that's really curious to think about, and because I don't think, I've only been to Norway that once. I've talked to people from Norway, but that doesn't give you any impression of what the real everyday culture is like. And I just assumed she was sort of quirky, sort of anxious, socially awkward person, but that's pretty acceptable here. Mm-hmm. It's just not a lot of people can express it that well, or act upon it in this way, and writing a giant book that encapsulates that. But it's not
everybody at AW. It's basically everybody at AWP.
Yeah.
It's the entire
antisocial, maladjusted.
It's every Alpha attendee as well.
Let's go get drunk and do bad dance moves. All right, sounds good to me. I'm game. Let's do it. I'm in. Yeah, that's weird because I also read it through a very American lens because I don't know enough about Norway to. But yeah, that's a really interesting. It kind of would shade the way I read it differently if I start from the beginning again, thinking about it that way.
Well, and I'm just saying, I lived in Norway for 1 year, and then I've been back multiple times, and so I'm no expert, but there is this kind of social etiquette law called the Janteloven, and it's like the law of Jante. I don't know who Jante is, but I think it's this sort of idea that you don't want to stand out. You don't do things to stand out. Okay. So including like striving to be the best or something, and that's really countercultural. So I look at, Karl Ove Knausgaard's books, and I mean, that was just such a scandal, especially in the context of Norway. And then Kjersti's book on the heels of that, and then all of the sort of crime, the Scandi noir books. It's just because you're supposed to be subdued, and it's like painting with a very broad brush, but I think my personal experiences of it is whenever I've run into some problem, which doesn't happen too often, thankfully, but with a publisher or something with a book that I'm translating, I'm very candid and open in talking about the problems. And one time, a Norwegian in the publishing industry told me very straight, we don't really talk about problems. And I was like, you don't talk about problems in the workplace? And they were like, no, people just won't answer your call, or we'll just go to a meeting, and then we'll just hope that you don't repeat the problem. And
wow.
I was really shocked to hear that. So I think that this kind of literature is, in that context, is also interesting. It is quite countercultural.
That's That's really curious.
Yeah, and there's little sprinklings of it now that I'm thinking about this. For instance, just small moments where they're going to have a drink and they say "skål" and she says "glass" instead. Again, another way of kind of standing out in a quirky, interesting way. Yeah. Which I just thought, oh, that's neat, that's funny. And then thinking about it, how you're speaking about, that's actually a really kind of poignant, neat moment. It's very small, but it says a lot about what Kjersti's like, or right. how she's different or against the grain in some way.
Yeah, she tries to break out of it all these ways. I have this theory because I lived in Germany as well, and they also have a very rules-based culture in general. I mean, and all of this is not to say that everyone is a conformist in any of those countries, not at all. And Norwegians also have this really gruff kind of humor too. But living in Germany, I have developed this theory, which I think is an original theory, that Germans follow the rules so much, and they are just dying to break out of it. And one of the main places that they break out of it is in the public swimming pool, because they are so violent. In the public swimming pool, I have never been beaten up so much as I have when I've been swimming in a German swimming pool. I almost got mugged in a swimming pool when I was pregnant. It's just the most violent place. And I think that in my theory is that they're just following the rules and conforming all the time, and that's one place where they can really get it out underwater, so nobody can really see it.
What? Wow.
Yeah. Technically, there is no footing in the pool. I can do what I want as I float.
It's not floating. It's pummeling.
Everything that you're describing doesn't jive with my idea of what you do in a swimming pool. I don't think I've ever been hit or pummeled or touched in a swimming pool.
Have you ever been run over by a man swimming?
No.
Have you ever been run over and punched in the face by an old woman?
No.
I have, in a German swimming pool. But I mean, it's all this to say, I have this theory. Who knows? It's an original theory, so I would like to, patent that.
I love this theory. I can already see the New Yorker sketch of it. This is amazing.
I think they need to send somebody in undercover to the German swimming pools. But all this to say, like, I think that, you know, in cultures, like, I do think America, even though we have like sort of this polite veneer, we are still quite candid.
Yeah.
And in cultures where you're supposed to be kind of more subdued or like even more polite, you know, I wonder if that comes out in these ways in literature more. I'm not sure.
And that's subtly referenced when she says something about like when John's meeting with her at Christmas, and she's like, maybe he asked so many candid questions because he's an American.
Oh yeah,
like something to that effect. But yeah,
we're just so like open-faced and naive, all of us,
and direct. Usually more direct.
Yeah.
See, I'm gonna have to reread that part where there's the interaction with Robin in this section.
Wait,
there's a lot
British,
of.
Yeah, Welsh.
I think so. Wales. Did you mention Wales or Welsh?
Welsh.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But like from an anthropological stance, she's kind of looking at him in this like, what is this weird creature that I'm encountering, and like how he behaves differently, or he's shy but is polite, or kind of like learning these little strange lessons from this weird creature. And I'll have to reread that part again now.
Yeah.
This is going back to something you said earlier, but the section, the thing about the tree and all that in knee is actually in this section that we're supposed to go over. So
is it? Okay.
Wait, no, it's not. Sorry, it's 100 pages before. I've got my pages screwed up. But yeah, I just
like,
opened to it.
That was about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I just opened directly to it. The stairs are very slippery. I slid down and planted my tree in the wall. Your tree? I planted my tree. Of course, I mean my knee. So that's
right.
Yeah. Just as I went to open it, opened right to there, and it's like, oh, 63. I know we're in the 60s somethings.
Yeah, and I wish I could think of more just off the top of my head, but I can't.
Yeah, I mean they come up every so often, and you always pick them out. But
what was the one about ice? There was something about be careful of the ice or the holes in the ice or something. There was that one.
I don't remember. There's
for a while
so
I was
many.
taking notes of all of them, but then I stopped because there were so many.
Yeah. I have another. Well, let me read this thing, and I have a question for you. Actually, let me ask you the question first. So, is there a movie version of this? Oh, or sorry, not of this, of her first novel, of The Faster I Walk, Smaller I Am. Is there a movie or a play or a TV show or something that was done of it? Like she mentions the National Theater in this section, but last week when I did a search for it, I got all these screen caps of like this older woman that seems to be playing part in that movie, or like what would be a movie or a TV version or a filmed version of some sorts. But I couldn't really find anything that made any sense to me, and I didn't look very hard. I can pretend I looked.
I have no idea. Okay. Let me just see real quick.
Yeah, because I was just curious, because it seems like in this section, so her books come out, she wins the debutante prize.
It says Skomsvold has dramatized the novel, and the play premieres at the National Theater in Oslo in 2014.
Oh, so maybe it's a play, but the images online look very, they look more like a TV show than a play, but it might be, it might just be like whatever the context of that photo. That's throwing me off, but okay, cool. Because yes, it's mentioned in here that she's meeting with the person who wants to play. Is it Matea, or how do you say the?
Yeah, Matea.
Yeah. Okay. Wants to play that character or is going to play the character in like a play version, which is interesting. But yeah, in this section she goes through that, and then she has it's right here, National Theater. She'd like to play Matea in the National Theater. It's on 375. But then, so that goes on. Then she's going to start working on her new book, and is having like a lot of like depression and anxiety issues. that was the part. Like when I got to that, I was like, oh, I get this. Like I don't have chronic fatigue syndrome, but I could totally relate here. Like
we're next to each other. Hey, here's a deadline. I'm not going to make it.
Yeah,
not even close.
wait. Today's the 12th, right? Yeah. Oh yeah, my deadline tomorrow. So. Yeah, thankfully no one's watching this. I
think her angst and anxiety, like even if somebody doesn't suffer from chronic fatigue syndrome, which is a whole thing in itself. I mean, I don't want to minimalize that, but I think that her anxiety and her depression and her anxiety about writing and becoming a writer is all very universal. And I think that's what makes it work for a wider audience too.
Yeah, and we've talked a bit about like how this book is really personality driven. And when Patrick, he told me it was okay to share this. So Patrick Smith was on the last episode, and we talked about a bunch of things. And then yesterday he sent me a message about the book because I think he was reading this section. He said, a thing that's fascinating about Monsterhuman is that I don't think either of us look to like a narrator of a book, but I'm not sure Monsterhuman would work if I didn't like her. And making her likable also involves showing tons of flaws, which I think that was one of the things that we sort of said it in different ways, but it is true that like if you don't like her, the book really drives on that. It's not like you're like, what's the next plot point that I'm going to follow? It's
right.
more, do I want to hear her voice and her jokes and her perspective?
Yeah.
Her quirkiness.
She really, I think you really do start to like her just because, like you said, she's flawed, but she's also really funny. And just you want to see more of the way that she sees the world because she keeps surprising you. You know, I think she just keeps surprising. She keeps surprising the reader with like her little comments or her weird, the things that she laughs at. Like there's some part where they're like, she says she laughs at something. She says, no one understands why I laughed at that.
Yeah.
But she doesn't explain why she laughed at it.
Right.
And I just think that.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was wondering, do you think though, like a likable or a sympathetic narrator is kind of a necessity for a first person point of view?
Yes.
I think there has to be something
Anybody
that the reader is invested in. You know, like.
Yeah.
I don't know that like it can be a loathsome person like Humbert, you know, but there has to be a reason that you're interested in following what they have to say.
Yeah.
I don't know if that.
Yeah,
it could be like obviously it could be voice driven, like an amazing voice that you want to like. I'll go along for the ride just because of this voice is incredible, or the interesting way in which they see the world. I think there's kind of both in this. Like there's an interesting voice that's I don't know, it kind of puts you at ease and you want to like know what's happening, even if you don't have the footing that you necessarily need. The way it jumps, kind of just randomly, and you're like, wait, where the hell am I? You can't read this nonchalantly while the news is on in the background and your kid's running around, because you'll read a paragraph and be like, where the fuck am I now? Wait, you have to go back. So it totally works in that. And then I think also with showing flaws and being, you know, just it's like that first guest we had, the world rights agent? Yeah. Really wanted to kind of hammer home it's, you know, about discovering her humanity. It was like I think he mentioned like 3 or 4 times. We were just trying to have fun and crack jokes. He's like, no, this is about humanity. Let's go back. Like, yes, I know. This is important. I get it. But
you weren't conforming enough, Brian.
Yeah,
exactly. I'm working at it.
I have a translation question for you. That was one that I would just not, that I feel like is probably something I just don't know. But on 399, it's talking about Kari, and says, but Epsilon doesn't fall down from the turning bars and die after all. And I start to get nervous. I whisper to Kari and ask her what the English word is. Turning bars, Kari whispers back. And I ask her for another English word, even though I actually know it. Paralyzed, replies Kari in a whisper. What are turning bars?
Okay, this is assuming that I just remember the Norwegian. Just a moment. Isn't it some kind of gymnastic bars? Like I'm thinking, are they the 2 bars like this in gymnastics?
Like the uneven bars?
Yeah, or I'm not sure.
I wasn't sure either, and I just reread that. I just reread the As Fast As I Walk, and I couldn't remember. I didn't remember this, so I was just like, I don't know what I'm missing here. This is my bad reading at like 10 p.m. last night. Is this?
So there's
I need to.
For the female gymnastics, it's uneven bars, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Are there 2 bar event? Because the men just have the 1
parallel bar. No, I think.
And then there's and then they have the parallel bars.
Yeah.
Because the men don't do the uneven bars.
No, I don't think so. But they do more.
Is it a machine?
A machine.
And then there's a pommel horse. But
just a moment.
Bars.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah. My computer's too slow to look it up, but I saw something with some sort of exercise equipment with turning bars.
I feel like it's going to be like a fun joke.
Oh yeah, so it's like, you know how you go to a park and they have different exercise equipment, and sometimes they'll have like the 3 bars where you can do various pull-ups and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently that's turning bars. But this is another case where I'm just like terrified that I translated it incorrectly.
Sorry, don't be terrified. I'm just curious of like.
There is apparently something called turning bars, and it is this exercise like climbing and pulling equipment.
Huh. I just don't exercise, so just on the out that.
Yeah, you lost us when you said outside.
Yeah, it's like, is it in my kitchen?
But to point out, like to go back to that part, I think this is one of these things which is just sort of awkward in the writing in general. Even if it said, what are the other bars from the gymnastics?
The uneven bars.
The uneven bars. Even if it was uneven bars, it's still a weird way to write about it, right? Like I whispered to Carrie and asked her what the English word is. If it was uneven bars, Carrie whispers back, and I asked her for another English word, even though I actually know it. Paralyzed, replies Carrie in a whisper. Like I think it's just kind of, she has this sort of weird style that I feel like she's not always explaining to the reader what's going on, and she's not really trying to help the reader out in these ways.
I feel like that comes up a lot with Hilda. Like that seems to be like a lot of their interactions happen. I mentioned this last time, but happen off screen or off page. And so sometimes it's just like, I don't know what your relationship is at this moment in time, but like, I get it. I get the gist of it, but like, there's a lot of things, a lot of details that are just not there. So you don't quite get the whole impact. It's just like they've separated and they're not really that close anymore. But all the whys, all the like that falling out just sort of kind of happened. Not really, it wasn't really explained. Whereas in a different book, it would have been like a central, like, set piece of like this fight, what this fight means and how their perspectives differed or something like that. And instead, this is just like shuffles it off and like moves through and remains focused on her and on her observations.
Yeah, which I think makes sense in a way, because this is all really, really hyper focused on her and her process, both to become a writer and to become human or to feel human. And but I think one of the things is I wonder if she does it on purpose to show the awkwardness of that relationship, and then she does these things in the text also to just show her awkwardness, like as a person, and her flaws and her quirkiness. But I think it's, in a way, it was kind of laborious to translate, and in some ways it's a little bit laborious to read. But on the other hand, I think it's sort of brilliant that she writes it like that.
I think that like the commitment to it is kind of impressive. Like even more so than like if you like it or not. And I could see like at certain points, especially the way that we're doing it is maybe not the most conducive. Like I feel like you could read this in like a quicker way. Like if you just read like a few hundred pages over like a few days, you might not, whatever. It would be a different experience than reading like the 40 pages and talking about those 40 pages where we're stuck in her awkward head in that way. Like you don't move on. Whereas if you just kept moving on, it probably is a little bit different. But yeah, the fact that like we're on page 406 and it is committed. She is committed to this approach. Like it's kind of amazing.
I felt like there were times when I would just get really frustrated, especially since I was at the beginning when I was translating at this crazy pace. Mm-hmm. I would just feel like, oh my God, she's just ruminating on these things that are like so oddly stated and sometimes just so, I don't know, like so minuscule. But then she would come out with like really surprising things or like really beautiful ways of saying things. And then I'd be like, oh, but that's why, know? Yeah. And then I would be like, oh, and this really is literary fiction that I'm translating here, it's sort of, but it was like an up and down.
Well, I'll bet. How about that experience of, I would assume that for a lot of translation work, it's not super dissimilar from when you're trying to write your own stuff where like you feel good about it in a little bit and like you're into it and then you like lose that flow or this is frustrating, or like either your translation is frustrating but also the book is frustrating and then it all clicks again and feels great. I don't know, maybe that's projecting, but
no, I mean,
were you familiar at all? Oh, I'm sorry, I cut you off. My apologies.
No, what am I familiar with? What?
Oh, I was just wondering, were you familiar with Kjersti's work before you took on this beast of a book?
No, actually, I wasn't. Dalkey just asked me to do it, sort of out of the blue, and they also didn't. I didn't have any time to read her previous book. I sort of scanned through it, and I think that also would have been way better for me to have read the story before I translated this book, because I had a better idea of what that was all about. But no, I wasn't familiar, and she had only written this one book before this Monsterhuman came out.
I'm supposed to remind you, I'm not sure how to ask it as a question, to tell us about Monster Translator.
Oh, right. Monster Translator, the sequel.
The sequel. 600 pages.
I have this fantasy, and it's not going to happen, but because I have other plans, but I'm working on my own first novel right now, and I thought it would be kind of funny because I started writing my novel at the same, while I was translating this book, or I started doing the
Holy moly.
I started doing the research to write my novel
when
I was translating this book, and then immediately after this I sent it off. I started writing my novel, and then with the legal things happening, it was sort of like this big saga, and all this stuff happened in my life that was kind of dramatic, and because of the legal implications of this, which I won't go into, but I thought it would be kind of funny if, or like close the loop, if I publish my first novel and then I write a book about the process of publishing my first novel and name it Translator. And that would like talk directly about translating this book, and it would just sort of come full circle. But but I'm not going to do that.
That seems like a fun idea, though.
Yeah, it would be funny.
You just need a couple-year grant to just do that.
Yeah.
You could sell at least 25 copies at Alta, I guarantee.
Yes. Yeah. And that would make it worth it.
Oh, man. Have you read her new book?
I think you're...
Oh, her new book. Her new book is called The Child.
Yeah.
And I have not read it yet. She's going to be at the Frankfurt Book Festival, and I'm going there. So I'm hoping to get a copy of it there, and also to meet her in person, because I've never actually met her there.
I was going to ask, that was one thing I was going to ask, like if she was like her character, or like how she writes herself in here. Oh, which brings up a different question. So there's that, like, I don't know if you've interacted with her enough to say anything to speak to that. But the other thing was that when I reread Faster I Walk, Smaller I Am, the tone and the sort of cadences were similar to this in a way that made me think that you had read it before you started translating this, because it did have a certain, they jibe very, very well.
Well, thank you for that compliment. I think it speaks to her consistency in her language, though, which probably comes out. I mean, translators are different, and there was a different translator for the first book, but it must have been similar enough that we both picked up on that. Yeah.
And I mean, it's not surprising that this is a section that has a lot of Shklovsky stuff in it too. I don't know. Have you read Theory of Prose or any of the Shklovsky things that she's referencing?
No.
It's very much like what she's internalized a lot of that, of his theories and ideas about how to write as like a Russian structuralist, and the idea that like you have to use words in ways that are surprising, otherwise there's no point to like poetry or writing. That everything has to be, that it's only through like estranging or putting a word into the context in which it's not the expected thing, or the idea or concept in some way that's not the expected thing, that's what makes literature, because it makes the reader or the experiencer have a new thought that otherwise they can't have, because they already know what's coming. And that seems to be like the real bit that she's coming to in this, of like in terms of her writing, of like trying to make that awkwardness clear in an awkward way.
Right. Yeah, no, I wonder if that, I mean, is kind of the impetus for all of those awkward things in the whole text, right?
Yeah.
Very much. And then she kind of makes it, like, I feel like in the beginning, she starts out, you know, the text starts out like kind of awkward, and as it goes on, it just becomes better and better, like the writing itself. And I have also wondered if that was also intentional.
I assumed it was, because it seemed to move in sections, like the different titled areas seem to reflect a different thing. Like the earlier one, I forget which one it was, but when she talks about changing the faster I am, or the faster I walk, into third person from first person, and that section is all in third person, is like, this part doesn't work very well. And it's clear like that doesn't work well in this text either. So like it seemed like very intentional of like the improvements and you're growing. It's like creating a consciousness of her and of this character as you go along in a way that's not fully formed at the beginning. Like there's no essential character of her at the start. It becomes through her evolution of her writing style and how she expresses herself that her being comes into being in here.
Yeah, it's about humanity.
It's about humanity, Brian. It's about what it means to become human.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. Rediscovering your humanity. Yes.
Oh man, I feel like I was going to ask you another question. I don't remember what it is anymore. Brian, do you have something?
Oh, I just want to
say that.
Oh, go ahead. Well, I was just going to tell you that I checked my dermatologist because you guys had made a point in one of the podcasts. You were like, I don't think that medications for dermatology can fix migraines, and I happened to be at the dermatologist on the day that I listened to that podcast. So I just asked her, and she said that there is a type of medicine that you can take for like acne and skin problems, which I think she does talk about, her face and her skin problems, that is also used for regulating hormonal things and blood pressure, the same medication. And so possibly that is what it was. So I don't think it was a mistake in translation.
Oh, I don't. Yeah. I wasn't sure if it was a mistake in that way.
Get him, Becky. Get him.
I don't really even remember that clearly, but I think I remember it just being like, wait, does she have skin problems or does she have migraine problems? And like, what is she trying to get treated?
Why does it have to be either or, Chad?
It doesn't have to be either or, but like, but she goes into so much detail about things. I was just curious.
I'm just glad she didn't get killed in one of those socialist medicine death panels. That's all I'm saying.
I know.
I'm just glad she's here.
I mean, everyone else is dying in this book, like all over the place.
Yeah.
Is unnerving in this chapter.
But Brian was going to say something else.
Yes, I was going to say, don't sell yourself short. This is a tremendous translation, regardless of whether it was 3 weeks or 3 years or 3 months. Like, I think you did a marvelous job. Yeah. I could only imagine how difficult it was. And to me, it reads so smooth and so wonderful. I just think, bravo, kudos to you.
Oh,
thank you for the work you did. This is really well done.
It's got a really strong voice.
I want to give a shout out to my good friend Tura Schweppes, who is a professor at the Högskola in Bergen, who also read through it for me and gave me also some tips at the very end. And he's been a tremendous support as well. Nice. And I wanted to, I had all these plans to send him. I really tried to find someone at the University of Bergen who I could pay to dress up like in a monster outfit and then give like a singing, what do you call it? Like a singing gram, like deliver a thing to him at his office. Like,
oh my God,
a song and a dance. But apparently like no one in Norway does that. So I kind of dropped that idea. I think it's a great idea.
It would have been blowing their mind.
Right.
little too quirky, a little too standout. We don't do that here.
True.
No, definitely not. Was there anything else that you've listened to that we were way wrong about, or that you want to correct us on, or fix us, or tell us, point out that we probably blew through?
Oh, nothing that you're wrong about. I mean,
or anything you want to add to, or
no. Okay. I mean, like I said, like you have said, it's a hard book to talk about, sort of page by page, because it is just about the process, more or less.
Yeah.
I wanted to know, Chad, what you think about like the writing programs as a publisher, because in Norway, I don't know I can't remember how much this is stated in this book, but like publishers in Norway will actually pay people who are not writers to like come to their writing schools, like writing workshops that are organized by the publishers. And then they get to work with the editors and the agents of those publishers. And a lot of new writers come out of that.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a scarcity difference. Like I feel there's something similar I was talking to my students about yesterday in like Bulgaria, where there weren't a lot of like of prose writers, Bulgarian prose writers, for a long period of time. There's like some poetry, but if you were going to read fiction, it was translated. Like 90% of everything was translated because there just weren't prose writers in Bulgaria. And I feel like for places like countries like this, where you have like a comprehensible number of potential writers, and that there's people that have some talent and then can hone it by working with like these other writers and with the publishers, that sort of makes sense. Whereas in America, it seems like there's just such an abundance of people who are writing that like the whole program seems so much different. And like that kind of idea wouldn't work here at all, because it would just be, we don't need it, or it's nonsensical. Whereas like these programs seem to be more closer to like what I'd think of as artist colonies or residencies, like Breadloaf, or like those places where you have like more of a mentorship and a place to write that's less of an MFA program and more of like a craft and very, very particularly like publishing geared idea.
Okay.
And that seems different to me. But it might just be my like justifying or trying to make an impression of it.
Have you ever done like a per capita sort of comparison on writers, published writers per capita? I would be curious.
I know that Iceland is like off the charts.
Huh.
It's like they
11 people live in Iceland.
Yeah, they don't have very many people, and a lot of it's like, isn't it something like 60% of the people in Iceland will publish a book in their lifetime? It's like something crazy, like so high. But no, I haven't really thought about it, because it's hard to judge like what counts as a book. Because there's the like self-publishing and everything is so prominent that there's so many people that if you like Google like how many books or how many authors are, you'll get these crazy numbers, because there are people who like self-publish their book on Amazon. And that shouldn't really count, but everything gets lumped together. So it'd be hard, but that's an interesting idea. I mean, do you know much about these schools or how they function?
I haven't been there, no. It just seems like I see calls for them all the time.
Uh-huh.
And I've even talked to, and I'm always thinking, I would love to go do that as a writer.
Yeah.
And I even spoke with one publisher about a different book that I was writing, like a children's book. And he was a publisher in Norway, and he was trying to encourage me to send him the book to publish first in Norwegian.
Wow.
Because he was like, if you publish a book first in Norway, like you're set, like you get a lot more financial support than if it's translated into Norwegian. And I was like, that sounds intriguing, but I write in English. So
just translate it. Just have someone else translate it for you.
Yeah, that's just like a roundabout way to come into the yeah.
So here's the thing that it does remind me of a bit is the Faber Academy that Faber and Faber has in the UK. So they have creative writing courses that you can sign up for. They have a manuscript assessment program, and it is sponsored by the publisher.
Okay.
So that's sort of similar. I don't know exactly what it entails. I'm just looking at their website on my phone though. And there's a great bit. So it's like, find the creative writing course that's right for you. Since 1929, Faber and Faber has helped writers from around the world to find their voices. View courses, why choose us? This site seems a little bit like a writers and books situation, but they are a publisher. And then it says, would you prefer to speak to someone? Call Joey at this number. Like, what? What? No.
I didn't know that people in the UK are called Joey.
I don't either. Like, isn't that like that's like feels like a slight. Their name should be more like Jerome or something like more proper. Yeah, Joseph. Joey. Yeah. Call Joey or request a callback. No.
Maybe that's to make it feel more accessible,
Yeah, I guess so. Don't call Sebastian, because nobody wants to call Sebastian.
Yeah. No, I don't know anything about the Human School or any of those things. I think it would be interesting to learn more about them. And Norway has this program for translators, Norwegian translators, called the Translator Hotel, where we can apply to go stay in a hotel in Oslo for a period of time if we're working on something that requires that we be there. So that's a really amazing program. And if I did something like that ever, then I would probably delve more into what are these writing institutions that are there in Oslo.
Yeah. So just to follow up on this thing. So I tried to say that I wanted to take a class, and you can take a 6-month class on writing a novel where you meet like I don't know if it's every week. It doesn't really say. But it's with like a bunch of it seems to be some favor authors that come and help address and help you write your novel.
Oh, that's with Faber and Faber?
Yeah. Flexible alternative, getting a creative writing MA. It's designed for people who are considering a career, prepared to engage fully in the hard work involved. Apart from workshops, you'll be devoted as much time as possible between classes to writing. You'll have the chance to present your work to a class of 15 committed novelists and get their feedback. So it's like, seems like it's somewhere in between like Writers and Books, MFA program, and some sort of residency thing. But interesting. So, I mean, I guess it seems to be like a model that would make some degree of sense. It just seems like in America, we just don't need it because there's just so many people, so many writers. Like, there's no publishers. Like, I can't find anything to publish. Like, I've just been looking so hard to find a book, and I haven't come across any unpublished books. Like that's never going to happen.
Right. Exactly. Writer or author? Do you call them writers or authors? I guess.
I don't know. What did we decide?
I wanted to also state that to you guys that the word in Norwegian is the same word. Like there isn't really two word choice that I can think of. It's just this one word for forfatter, and it's a very different word from the verb to write, which is why I wrote it as author. But but just so you know.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't even remember what we ended up coming down on.
There was a section here where it said author with a capital A.
Yeah.
I was in
someone was speaking about it.
The list, I think.
Oh no, yeah, but she was quoting somebody where they talk about an author with there's almost like a parenthetical, like with a capital A, like the author, right?
Oh, right.
It was the Roland Barthes thing. Yeah, talking about the death of the author, but that's like a very specific. Yeah, that's very, very specific. Right. So
no, I went with writer. I like writer.
I know
that. I don't. I think Rodrigo was as a writer guy as well, right?
Writers, yeah. He's the character. Oh, yeah. The character is the writer in the book in the trilogy.
Which trilogy are we talking about now?
This is Rodrigo Frezen's the invented part, the dream part, the remembered part. The character is the writer, and not the author.
Yeah.
But I don't, and I feel like there's a section that
comes
up.
Hierarchy.
I can't remember.
And there's the hierarchy as author.
There's like a hierarchy
over writer.
Yeah, like writer. Oh, so you just dabble with words. I'm an author. I get my stuff published, and I sit on a panel. Like, I don't know. It feels. I don't know. It just feels. I don't like it. So I just like a writer. Like, just be writing. Always be writing. Like, don't worry about it getting published or whatever. Just write.
Yeah, and she's becoming an author.
Take on it.
She's becoming an author because I feel like an author is a career and can get their books published, and people are asking her for her pages and hitting her deadline, and she's an author because it's like a thing. Whereas like I could say that I'm a writer because I write things on our website, but I am definitely not an author, like by any means.
Right now, I tell people that I'm a writer and translator because my book hasn't been published.
So then you'll be an author.
But the way that when people talk to me about that, they think it's like a hobby. They're like,
exactly, yeah.
So I feel like even if you don't like the titles, I just wonder if if you just have to explain a lot less if you just say author.
I'm an author.
I should embrace.
I'm an unpublished author.
More. I feel gross. I need to embrace it a little bit more, but. Yeah, my mom still thinks I journal, so whatever.
So it's sort of like how I could say like I'm.
That's what I love when the dad is giving writing advice to Kjersti and his dad. Maybe stop giving me like how to write. Let's just move on.
Yeah.
Yes, Kjersti, you've got to write every day. You got to edit, and rewrite. It's like
parents are great. Parents are great.
Yeah.
Yeah, her relationship.
My mom is my biggest fan.
Yeah. But yeah, I could say like I'm an unpublished author, like I'm an undrafted second baseman. Pretty much the same thing. These are both dreams that could happen. Anyways, do you guys have a favorite line? What's that? Do you have a favorite line from this section?
Oh, from this section, honestly, okay, so I'm not sure if it's in this section, but I really like the what is it in English? It's the snow hag guy. Have we gotten to that part yet?
I believe so.
What is it in English? It's the snow hag, fishwife snow hag guy.
You're gonna have to give me a little bit more than that.
Oh, okay.
That's That's pretty concrete.
Yeah, but like, what's the context for the? Because there wasn't there a character that kept saying snow hag, or
Yes.
but it's like it was way back towards the middle.
Oh,
I
was
don't
that?
remember.
Okay, well then.
But you can use it if you can find it.
No, I just like the part. Here, page 162. I just opened right to it. He doesn't smile.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't say anything, just looks at me. Sometimes he says fishwife or snow hag. At first I don't understand why, but then I figure out that he is like someone going around in a foreign country who doesn't know the language. Yet he still goes out into the world every single day. He bikes to school even when there is 6 feet of snow. What day was I born? I will ask him when I learn that he has special talents. A Monday, he will say, snow hag.
Yep. I have that mark.
Guy. And then at some
I have
point,
that mark in my book too.
like going to this party, and she's like, doesn't know the directions to the hotel. And the fishwife snow hag guy is standing on the street, and she says, do you know how to get to the, like, she asks him for directions, and he says fishwife, and then he gives her the directions, and then he says snow hag.
Yeah.
And I just think it's hilarious. Like, I don't know why, but I really like that.
It's yeah, I think that's very funny too. It's kind of like Satan dressed up as Britney Spears. Just kidding. Call back to the earlier. I've got my favorite here is on 380. Kari says that my text is more audacious than it is justified. But whatever the intention behind the work as a whole, there can be no doubt that it is entirely sincere, and that the result, though we may find it difficult or unpleasant, is undoubtedly important. Which I like that. I like the more audacious than it is justified. That's the part that I really, really dig.
Yeah.
That's always my favorite, is when Chad gets a couple extra whiskeys in him, and around 1:30 you start getting random just cursing baseball texts. You're like, what the fuck is
I was
this?
getting more audacious than actual.
Yeah, you wake up at 5 a.m. and you miss like 8 texts. Like, what are you doing?
or breakdowns of how to do hyperdrive, talking about analyzing hyperdrive. This is a new one. That's my new favorite thing.
I'm so glad you.
So I just mentioned the one about. Yeah. I paraphrased it, so I'll just do the actual quote. It's on 373, at the very bottom. No one expected anything from me then, I say, but I was scared to death not to be able to do it. The pressure that I had then was infinitely larger than the external pressure now, because even if I'm not able to write a second book, I'm still going to be a human being. It's about being a human.
Yeah.
But now they might want to attack your second book, said Dad. You have to write and rewrite and rewrite. And then on the next page, I tell Dad that I don't think we should discuss how I should write anymore.
That is great.
That's perfect. Yeah, this is kind of like my husband. So my book, my novel that I'm writing, it takes place in Germany, and it's based on an idea that I got while I was in Germany. And my husband is German, but he doesn't read books. So like at the very beginning when I was writing my novel, I would share like things with him because you want to share it with somebody sometimes, or at least I thought I did. And then he'd be like, and then he'd be like, maybe you don't want to write about it like that. Maybe you should write about it like this. And it'd be like something totally different. And I'd be like, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Oh my God.
And I think, you know, people who love you, they want to support you, and they can do that by coming to your book launch when you published author.
When you're done.
Right.
When you're an author.
But maybe not by reading your book if they don't read books in general.
Fair point. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I don't know if there's anything else you want to plug.
Well, I think I'm very curious to read her next book called The Child. I believe that it is about her becoming a mother.
Yeah.
And really excites me, that topic as well. Yeah,
me too. I'm very curious.
Yeah, there was some dark pregnancy stuff in here that we didn't touch on.
I'm trying to find it. Hold on, it's right here. Where is it? She was
heavily influenced by Lars von Trier's. Is that the
Antichrist?
Oh, wow.
Antichrist?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It must be creepy to have a human being growing inside your stomach. It's the most beautiful thing, but at the same time, it's like a horror film.
Yeah.
Well, there's something
Yeah.
about a stillborn baby in here, which is just like nightmare fuel if you have a kid.
Well, that's
thinking about this
Lord
stuff.
von Trier, isn't it?
The Antichrist. And
Yeah.
Isaac, the namesake of your daughter is referenced in here too. Isaac Dennison.
Yeah, with syphilis.
Yeah. Solid.
She had syphilis.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wait,
Wait, your daughter's name is Syphilis?
no, his daughter's name's Isaac.
Yeah. I thought it sounded pretty. I just call her Sis for short.
She got an automatic entrance to Florida State University when she was born. Full
How dare you
scholarship.
besmirch the Harvard of the South?
Nobody watching this went to Florida State. I don't even think those people can read or figure out YouTube. Fuck Florida. Okay, anyways.
Are you gonna have Kjersti come on the show?
Theoretically, yeah. She said she would, but we have to nail down a time and everything.
Yeah.
But it'll be in a couple weeks, so yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I'm really curious.
I am too.
This too.
Sure.
It's a great book, and she's a good writer. I hope that she continues to write and comes out with more. And I would love to see her write more fiction as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. So next week will be the last episode, and it's the one that hopefully she'll be able to join us for. So we'll be covering pages 407 through 448, which is the last page of the book, and put this to bed, and then we will move on in whatever next month is, October, to Ducks Newburyport by Lucy Ellmann. So anyone listening that wants to follow along, order that now from Biblioasis, or if you're living in the UK, you can get it from Galley Beggar Press, and it's very long. So you might want to get started ahead of time. The schedule is not super forgiving because I want to finish it this year. So we're gonna sort of move it along.
And just real quick, where can we find Small Parsley?
Oh, at Enchanted Lion Books in Brooklyn.
Okay.
I think it's
awesome.
The publisher said that it should be distributors are able to order it now, and I think that the release date on the website is October 1st.
Perfect.
Awesome. Okay, I'll be looking for it.
And where can they get Joytime Killbox?
Yeah, where can we get that?
BOAEditions.org, and then national release on October 15th. So
congratulations.
And Dennis, we already have the pre-orders are here, so I'll ship out.
They're shipping now. Go get it if you want it. If not, that's cool. That's fine.
No, everybody go get it.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thanks everyone, and we'll be back next week with the end of Monsterhuman.
Thank you.
Used to sing with a straight face, my heart will go